Hi, everyone, and good morning. Welcome to our webinar series. Thank you for joining us this morning. I'm going to get us to the next slide real quick. Great. So welcome again. It has been a long, heavy week. I want to appreciate all of you for being here, all of you for speaking up, and all of you for the work that you do at your sites, especially given this incredibly challenging 2020 we've had. So thank you all. We've reached summer. We're getting there. We have a few things to do before we can maybe take a vacation in our backyards, but we're almost there. So I just really want to send out my appreciation and my love to you all. But welcome to our problem solving webinar, Moving Dual Enrollment Online. We've been doing this since March. And this will be kind of closing us up for this part of the year. So I thank you all for joining us this morning. So some Zoom technology, you've probably become masters of Zoom by now. You are muted, but please feel free to write us questions or comments in the chat. Our team is active on there and we'll be following up with you all. So our webinar, this has been a result of a change in our normal lives where we all kind of had to shelter in place and figure out how do we still serve students and do effective teaching and all this sorts of programs online. And so we've talked about a number of different topics, and we're going to do a little review down memory lane, I suppose, on the webinars we've hosted to really just kind of share the incredible amount of work you guys have all had to do in such a little amount of time in a very stressful time. A lot of things are going on for folks, so again, appreciations to you all. This has been your webinar team from Career Ladders Project, Naomi Castro, myself, Amanda Isa, Sherry Shojai, and Eder Flores. We've been here either on screen or behind the screens, putting these together with support and with the incredible work of our practitioners in the field. And so I just want to give a shout out to everyone. And then for today, we have some guest facilitators all the way. If you can please go ahead and put yourselves on mute, that would be fantastic. Thank you so much. So from LA to the Bay, we have Stephanie Fager and Sharon Turner, who will also be supporting us today during this webinar. All right, so if you are interested in checking out some past webinars from Career Ladders Project, please do see our website. Everything from the last webinar and from the first are all included there. You can find the videos, presentations, and additional resources. The link is right there, and it's also going to be dropped in your chat. So please do check that out. During today's webinar, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop it in the chat. You don't need to put like who the college is or who the question is meant for, because we don't necessarily have presenters today. We're doing it a little bit differently, but please do let us know if you have questions. We also encourage you to hold on to some questions that you would like to discuss a bit further for your breakout rooms. We will be doing a majority of our time today in those rooms with one of your facilitators, and they'll be able to walk through those questions with you. Some updates. As we do with every one of our webinars, we try to provide with the most up-to-date, relevant information related to this work. A lot of this is similar to the updates we provided on the May 21st webinar, and we've also included some additional links and information to figure out what's happening. It wasn't enough that we had to shelter in place. There was a lot of different things happening to our budgets, to our programs, and so making sure we stay up to date on that and informed helps us plan for the future, which will be another part of our conversation today, looking forward. As always, we want to share that the Chancellor's Office is providing information regularly about what is going on in our colleges and our communities. Please do check out their website and then look for that red bar that will take you to a site that has more information, where you can also subscribe to get emails with the most relevant updates and everything going on. Links to this information are, as always, dropped in our chat, so please do check those out. CLP has also produced a number of different resources. This is one of our initial resources produced to make it easy to find support for online instruction, tools, and resources available to the colleges. So please do check this out. It's on our CLP website, it's in the chat, and it might even be in your inboxes. So please do give it a look. All right, so we are going to do a quick webinar in review. We're going to start all the way back in March. I don't know about you, but I don't know what happened to May or April. It just kind of went like that. I don't know how we're in June. So trying to reach all the way to March is also a challenge. So here we go. Let's look at it. So back in March, a lot of things changed for us very quickly. We had our first webinar on March 26th, and we hosted Miguel Dueña, sorry, I apologize, from ELAC and Carla York from Cerritos College to come talk to us about what was our immediate response to all this. We went online. Now what do we do? So we were able to talk about some of those initial responses and some of the immediate updates from the field, one of which was the temporary suspension of student withdrawal regulations, which really continued to be a topic throughout the sessions, but definitely was a necessary change originally. So I want to also appreciate our two practitioners who joined that call to present what their work, their colleges were doing in response to a very quick change in our practice. So thank you to those two. Following week, we had from Foothill College, Josh Pelletier, and then from Chaffey College, a team of Matthew Morin, Joe Vallejo, and Nabil Torres. And both colleges talked about how they took dual enrollment online, how those pesky little paper enrollment forms were a thing of the past, that they moved everything onto an online platform, how they were able to work with students using those platforms and so forth. So we really had an emphasis on technology. How do we change our way of work? So we are doing it all online and virtual. And there were a lot of great resources and examples from this particular webinar. Following that, we talked a little bit more about the temporary suspension of the pass, no pass, a little bit more about how are we communicating with students, how are we talking to our communities. So we heard from Hartnell College, Laurencia Walker, and then from Long Beach, we heard from Terry Hardy Tidoro and Lizette Villegas and Rio Medina, all sharing about the work that they're doing to ensure dual enrollment is going on and it's students are communicated with and so forth. And this was a really great conversation just about how are we managing the grading system, the pass, no pass, so forth. And so I want to really appreciate the teams that joined for that call. On April 16th, we looked into intersegmental partnerships. And so we heard from Diane Walker from Antelope Valley Union High School District, Irit Grat, Dean of Social Sciences at Antelope Valley College, and then Stephanie Fager, who is also one of our guest facilitators today from the Coast Community College District. And here we talked a lot about how are we working together, how are we working as a community to provide programming, instruction, and so forth for our students. So this was a really great conversation about how we do that across our institutions. Next up, we took a little break, and then on May 7th, we had a conversation about how do we do recruitment? How do we reach out to students, either new dual enrollment students or entering college students? How do we do this online? So we got to hear from Meg Gevorkian from Glendale Community College, talking about how they've been able to reach out to students, track who they've kept in touch with, how they've been able to do recruitment, and more about moving things online. It is important that we not only stay in communication with the students we currently have, but also continue to reach out to our community to offer these programs and accessibility to higher ed. So I really appreciate that conversation talking about recruitment. And the last webinar we had on May 21st, we started talking about how could we, both statewide, locally, regionally, create online resources that can be shared and used and could be done in a way to really get information to all students. So we talked a lot about online orientation, what components of an online orientation we'd like to see, what could be done at the state level, what could be done, what needs to be done more locally. And so we had a great conversation and presentations from Stephanie Fager and Sharon Turner about what their regions have been exploring and working on. Some products were shared, and we got into breakout rooms to discuss in further detail what we'd like to see, what our colleges have planned for the fall, and so forth. And so that's been our little walk through memory lane. Here's just a quick overview of the dates that we've all met and the different topics we've put together to discuss during those webinars. I really want to appreciate all of you who've been joining us from across the state, you know, during this crazy time, but being present for your students, present for your colleagues, and finding a balance also to be present for yourself. So I really appreciate you all for joining Career Ladders Project in these webinars to hear about the great work happening at our institutions, the community college institutions across the state, and our practitioners. So thank you to everyone for that. For today, we had our little looking back and review, and we're going to move into a little bit more of a reflection. It is important to recognize the incredible amount of work that every college and every practitioner and student and community member has done in the past few months to make education possible, to give access to things and resources, to find ways with our equity gaps to ensure that technology and food and different resources are given to every person. So we're going to do a little reflection in breakout rooms to kind of talk about what's changed for us. What is something we learned in this webinar that we took back to our campuses, theoretically or virtually speaking. So what is something we were able to implement, an idea we heard, a partner we shared with, and then also, what was something that changed that perhaps we didn't think we could change before our situations have all changed? So, you know, what was possible that you first thought might have been impossible? So we're going to do a little reflection, and your facilitators will walk you through all of that. And then looking forward, we have a fall to plan for, we have a summer right around the corner. So what are your immediate challenges looking into the fall? And what are some structures you have in place? And then what else would you like us to talk about? These webinar series they're coming back. They're just taking a little summer break. So what are some other topics you think are needed for the field that you wanted to share? Maybe something you have that you'd like to share with the field. Let us know. We are here, and we want to make sure that we use this platform to do that. So that's what you have in store during this webinar. If you do have any questions, you can go ahead and put it in the chat right now. We probably will be addressing these throughout your breakout rooms, and definitely by the end of the webinar. If you go ahead and put that in there. I see that there's some action in the chat. That's great. Please continue to do that. So it looks like we are a little ahead of schedule, which I don't know about you, but I always think that's a great thing because that just gives us more time for conversation and ideas to percolate. So what we're going to do in a moment is we are going to jump into our breakout rooms. I please urge all of you to join these breakout rooms and come back to the group because we're not done with the breakout room. We're going to all come back into this big webinar. We have some more great information we want to share with you all, but just giving you a little heads up that we're going to go to these rooms. But then hopefully we'll see you all back. Like before, you will get an invite to a room. Please just accept that invite and you'll be placed into a room with a facilitator and they will take it from there and they'll guide you through it. But because it is still early in the morning and I'm sure you've all been staring at screens this whole week, we are going to give you a few minutes to transition into your breakout rooms. So you'll have 5 minutes once I say go to accept your room, but then step away for a little break. So when you are in your breakout rooms, your facilitators will kind of review what you're going over. You will pick a note taker and someone who's going to share the information when we all come back to the webinar. Please take notes on the Google Slides. And please try not to take notes on a different document. It's just really helpful to put it all on that slide right there. Don't worry about formatting and all that sort of thing. That could be dealt with later. But definitely just encourage the conversation. I encourage all of you to speak up. This is a great time to really share the work you're doing, the challenges you're facing, and what you need from the field. So with that said, encourage you all, in a moment, you're going to get an invite. Please do accept that invite right away so we can make sure the breakout rooms are all squared away. But then take 5 minutes to yourself to maybe grab some coffee, take a little break, do a little stretch, whatever you may need. And so in 5 minutes from the moment you accept your invite, please do come back so we can start this conversation. So it's about 10:16 now. You should get your invite in the next minute or so. Let's try to have everyone back at your screens by 10:21, 10:22. I know it's really specific minutes, but hopefully by that time we can get everyone started and your facilitators will get you going. So thank you for joining this portion of it. Please do accept your breakout rooms and we'll be seeing you very soon.
All right, hi everyone who is back in our main room. I'm just checking to see how many people are coming on in. Thank you all for joining us again after your breakouts. I hope the conversations were uh, really exciting and filled with reflection and looking forward and plans for the summer and fall. Thank you to everyone who joined those rooms and were able to share. I think we have most folks back. I'm checking to see if we have the different groups, the different breakout rooms, and I think we have. So I'm going to move forward. Give us a little more time to get some folks back in this main room. In the meantime, what we would really appreciate from Career Ladders Project is if all of you have a chance to check out this survey. This is we just would love to hear your feedback. We want to make sure that the work that we put to the field is useful and relevant and something that you are hungry for. And so please do feel free to check out this survey. It's going to be dropped in the link. There's more information I'm sure that will follow after this webinar. It's a brief feedback form. We just want to kind of hear about like what critical things you heard in these webinars or things that you were able to produce based on what you learned and saw here, and also what you are eager for, what you still want more information about, how we can support our changing ways of instruction given social distancing and so forth, while still maintaining our quality education. So please do let us know what topics you'd love us to discuss in this feedback form. So thank you guys for taking time for that. What we're going to do, we have just some time left to close up our webinar. I'd love to hear from the different groups. I'm going to go in order of breakout room numbers. So if breakout room number 1, whoever that might be, if you'd be willing to share, if you designated a speaker or your facilitator is doing it, I'd love to hear about a minute or so of just a summary of some of the things your group talked about.
Hi, do you want to hear about what we're looking forward or looking back?
You can pick.
Okay, well, we started with looking back, and I think there's more information you can see in our slide. I think everyone agrees that there's a lot of change that has happened. Obviously, some is because it's been forced on us, but some of those are good things, especially things like electronic forms and not needing wet signatures. Looking at grading, the webinars have been extremely helpful, and we're glad they're going to continue on next year or in the future. Some of the things that people thought would be impossible before COVID-19 were things like having the whole state get together and, share practices. We always thought we had to be in person, we had to go to a conference, and now here we are getting together weekly with wonderful ideas and finding out what our colleagues are doing. I think that was probably the biggest thing. A lot of people are new and haven't run into some of the issues that we're now hearing about solutions to. So especially for myself, I've only been in this position about 8 months, and 3 of it now has been on lockdown, as I like to call it. So that's what we're enjoying about the webinars. As far as looking forward, the registration cycle is an issue when we're challenged for the fall. When high school counselors are available, they're often on a teacher's schedule, which with maybe a week or 2 extra, but that limits our contact throughout the summer. And then the big issue, especially for me, and I'm sure other community colleges, is the cutting of FTEF. And so that dual enrollment basically is the first thing that gets cut when they're cutting sections, and we're cutting 55 sections on my campus, and so far I only have one commitment of 1 section for the fall versus 15 plus for this semester. So those are our big issues. And in the fall, we didn't get to what kind of topics to talk about, so pretty much everything that people are dealing with, I'm sure.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, I think I'm representing breakout room 2, and I think a lot of what you said we would echo for sure. One of the last things we kind of touched upon, which I think made a lot of our hearts kind of warm, was we were just talking about how do we connect our dual enrollment students with the other college students. How do we increase more human-to-human interaction, given the fact that we're also virtual. And so using our learning communities as a kind of conduit for that, and how can we connect to the students so they can talk with one another, to have conversations not just about courses and schoolwork, but also just about social issues, you know, happening in our country right now, and how they could have peers to have these conversations with, given that schools are out and so forth. So that was a really neat piece. And one thing, like, looking forward, that they'd love to hear a bit more about is, like, how do we manage CTE courses while being socially distant? We did hear of a cool example with construction that was able to do it. And so I'm eager to learn more, and I'm hoping that we will be able to provide more information about how we do CTE courses from afar. So that was breakout room 2. Breakout room 3.
Hi, this is Sharon. I'm going to speak for breakout room 3. And just to keep it really brief, I think 2 things that really stood out to me in terms of immediate challenges is recruiting teachers to teach dual enrollment. That can be challenging just in general to find teachers to teach these classes for high school students. And now, assuming that at least some courses are going to be online in the fall, there might be more hurdles around that. Oftentimes teachers need to complete a training in order to teach online, and they're not necessarily compensated for that. So there is some anxiety around that. And another piece that we talked about in terms of topics that we want to hear about in the fall, people were really interested in data outcomes from this spring. So how does that compare to other semesters? So how many students enrolled in these courses, were in these courses, how many we lose, and then looking at the equity gap around that. So thinking about who is going to be enrolling in the fall, based on really probably who has access to technology. So our group talked a lot about that interest in seeing really what impact courses going online had for our students.
Thank you. Yes. Yes to all of that. Can I hear from group 4?
Yeah, so I'll be speaking on behalf of group 4. So we started out with challenges, and I think a common thread with all of the challenges is that we're experiencing most community colleges significantly increased demand for dual enrollment classes, at the same time that we're having to trim budget for reasons that we all know. So there's that paradox of having way more demand than you can possibly accommodate, and the strain that that's putting on the departments across our colleges. Another theme that came up was trying to confirm modality and schedules between community colleges and high schools to get things either on the summer schedule or the fall schedule in a way that would be responsible for everybody's budgets, getting instructors scheduled. Aligning high school and community college schedules has been a major headache, especially since a lot of the high schools are still not sure what their bell schedules or master schedules are for next year, for a lot of reasons. I think those were the primary challenges that came up. As far as topics that people would like to talk about in the fall, in general, just keeping up to date with all the changes, because boy, are there a lot of them. I brought up that I'm seeing some, I don't know if they will be issues or not, but at Foothill at least, we're asking all of the dual enrollment instructors that hold MenQuals to use our learning management system, which is Canvas. So I'm just embarking down that road right now of talking to districts that are using Schoology and Google Classroom about getting their instructors to use a different learning management system. So that's going to be a new venture, and I understand that'll probably have some labor implications. So I'm curious if other people are dealing with that or struggling with that. Reflection. So interestingly enough, in the group that I was in, someone brought up the Smartsheet presentation that I'd done, God, it feels like another lifetime ago. And what I updated the group on is that Foothill has actually already pivoted away from Smartsheets to Adobe Sign. And what I said is I'd be more than happy to come back and talk about why we did that. But fundamentally, we found that because we were absolutely swamped with students filling out that form, there are some limitations to using Smartsheets that Adobe Sign we thought was much better at handling, especially regarding the communication with students. So when students are using Adobe Sign and they're looking for signatures, it actually updates them at every phase that the form is at, and it's reducing a lot of the questions we get about where the form is in the process. So this was a decision made by our Dean of Admissions and Records to move to Adobe Sign. That's been a challenge for us, but I wanted to address that, and I was asked specifically to mention this on the wider call, that Foothill is no longer using Smartsheets. We're using Adobe Sign. So, and then what is something that you thought wouldn't be possible before COVID-19? I think I remember this from previous calls, but what signatures being widely adopted or moved away from into digital signatures? That didn't seem like it was a possibility, but boy, is it now. And then I heard from a lot of colleges too that from one college in particular, they felt like they were a bit behind in getting their material online. But this has actually given colleges an opportunity, right, under the circumstances to move all of their content online, which is allowing colleges to get caught up with others that might have been a little bit more down the road as far as getting all their classes into a virtual or online format. Exactly. So that was it from Group 4.
Thank you, Group 4. Yes, I just want to echo that particular webinar was mentioned in I'm sure many of breakout rooms. So thank you. And lastly, breakout room 5.
Hi, this is Meg. I will speak to what we kind of discussed within our groups, echoing a lot of the topics that everyone just mentioned. Specifically, we looked at, we talked about student onboarding and how this is the first time we were onboarding students virtually. We're seeking online resources to communicate with students in an effective way. We talked about, you know, for future webinars, maybe we could get some resources that work for other colleges. Like we talked about Flipgrid, which is an app used by a lot of high schools to communicate short video messages with students. So, you know, the question is that a viable option that we could use? We also mentioned Nearpod, which is compatible with Canvas. And so it would be great to hear from other colleges that are using these resources and just really being innovative in the way they communicate with students. We also spoke about textbooks and how that's a challenge, collecting textbooks from students who are currently enrolled as they're wrapping up classes, distributing textbooks to the new group of students who are onboarding. We talked about, you know, the push for OER, but there are some divisions that simply cannot change to OER because they don't have the resources or the build there yet as far as OER content goes. And then we dived into what we thought was impossible of a change for us was really moving forms online. That seemed impossible initially, but we've been able to do that. And I think at this point, we've all used a lot of different resources and there are some fallbacks and there are some advantages. But dynamic forms was mentioned as a form that's a little more versatile. So maybe to hear a little bit more about dynamic forms and how that's more education-based and more compatible with a lot of the things we're doing. For example, one of the challenges I'm having is we use DocuSign, but it's hard to extract information from DocuSign. It's hard to have high volume. So it's not built for education. So I think having an example of what we can use that's worked for colleges and what hasn't worked would be great.
Thank you. I think, yes, this is all really helpful information as we plan for the fall. I thank all the groups for your content, for doing those slides and for sharing both the reflections and the looking forward. And all those things, I'm like, yes, we want to talk about them and we have the summer to plan. I just want to thank you all again for that. To close us up, we are going to just share once again with you all our Basecamp community of practice. We've got nearly 70 people active on this so far. I'd love for us to get a few more. If you haven't been able to check it out just yet, please go ahead and do so. This is a platform that we use to drop all dual enrollment information we have, to share, to connect with one another. I please do encourage you to accept the invitation in our follow-up emails to join this Basecamp community of practice and to share some information. This is just a little idea of what it looks like. You can talk to one another, share some information. We put our documents up here. The different webinar information will be found in this platform as well. It's also on the Career Ladders project website, so you can find everything and more on that website as well. But this is one just specifically for dual enrollment. So please join our Basecamp community of practice. Thank you all for joining our webinar series. This is going to conclude us for this school year, but we will be working behind the scenes preparing for the fall. So please do send us your topics, your concerns, your challenges, your success stories that you'd like to maybe share with the field. Please do continue to do that. The Career Ladders Project, we are here for you. We send our hearts out to you. I appreciate all of you for the hard work you do, for the conversations you're having, for the movements you're involved in, and yes, so thank you all. I appreciate you. I hope the rest of your week goes well, and I will see you later. Take care, everyone.